coordinator at Insider Louisville, and really not going to say much about me, besides the fact that I do all of our event planning with help from our wonderful staff, with our meetups and things like that you guys might have seen if you're from the Louisville area, as well as our marketing side of sponsored content and dealing with our sponsors and talking back and forth, not our sponsors, our advertisers, and talking back and forth with them over what their sponsored native content should be and working with them. I work with all of our freelancers on assigning things as well as our agencies. So I felt that this was an important topic to talk about, considering all the fun stuff that's been coming out with Apple Ad Blocker, and how are you going to get your word out there? And the sponsored native content is a relatively new form of advertising in the world of digital, with how much it's blowing up and what people are doing with it and how they're organizing it. So we got a few people up here that can talk on all sides of it. So we have Hope Elton, who is a digital marketing and e-commerce manager at Brown-Forman. I'll have them just raise their hand as they go because I didn't tell them what order to sit in. Hope has been a leader in developing and executing cross-channel strategy for digital marketing, communications, and e-commerce for multiple brands at Brown-Forman. For 11 years, she has a passion for sharing stories and connecting with audiences through emerging relevant technologies. So I'll go ahead and introduce them, and then we'll let them each have a few minutes to talk. I have a few questions already prepared, and then we'll open the floor up for anybody to ask questions. Michael Rabkin is the Communications Director for Passport Health Plan. Michael is, totally going to reread my line again. It's a nonprofit managed care organization administering Medicaid benefits to nearly 300,000 people around the state of Kentucky. He is responsible for establishing and guiding Passport's overall communication strategy, including all external, internal, and marketing communications. Jeff Smith, the Brand Strategies Director at BuzzFeed. Jeff is responsible for advertising partnerships in the Southeast region. That's all he sent me. You guys will have to ask him more. And then we have Shell Wolverton. Did I get it right? Okay, I practiced. And she is an integrated service account manager with Shift Communications. Shell is a lifelong learner who is fascinated by analytics and data and reads anything she can get her hands and eyes on, which is good for a marketing person. Emily Ann Brown. She is the Director of Media and Analytics for Elasticity. Emily oversees media planning, buying, analytics at Elasticity, a digital marketing agency out of St. Louis, Missouri. You guys have already heard lots about that today. So we'll go ahead and just, if you guys want to take a couple minutes and talk about, Michael, if you want to start. I know
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, there we go. I'm Michael Rabkin. I'm the Communications Director for Passport. You can see some of our ads up here. This was today's post on Insider Louisville.
Oops, sorry.
It's every 2 weeks we have a sponsored post on Thursday to talk about issues related to healthcare, just anything related to health. We've talked about the American Heart Association, asthma, diabetes, COPD. It's not really targeted for our members, which are people who are on Medicaid around the whole state. We've been here in Louisville since 1997, statewide since 2013, thanks to Medicaid expansion. But what these posts are really targeted for are our advocates, people in the community, doctors, or healthcare professionals, or people who care about the healthcare profession. So we wanted to find a way to use the advertising we were already doing with Insider Louisville to really kick off and have that conversation about healthcare and about health, improving people's health around Louisville. And so these are different kinds of topics that we get. We have an outside writer that we contract with to produce these every 2 weeks. He just emailed me a few minutes ago saying, what do you want to do for the next one? So it'll probably be something related to diabetes awareness, because that's, as everybody knows, a huge healthcare problem here in Kentucky, here in Louisville. And so we try to do that every 6 months or so, have something new and different about diabetes. We also talk about heart disease. We key it to different events that are going on, or whatever's in the news, whatever's going on out there. And so it's just another way for us to reach a different kind of population. So thank you very much, and I'll pass it on.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Michelle Wolverton. Everyone calls me Shell. I work at Shift Communications, and my day-to-day is to talk to clients in our internal teams about different forms of marketing that they can use for their clients, or different forms of marketing that our clients can use to be successful, and whether it's a launch or a program long-term. One of the ways that we have recommended native advertising in the past is with bigger clients who want to make an impression right outside the gate. In fact, we tried to work with BuzzFeed and a client, T-Mobile, to get them to do a lot of native advertising on the site. That's just one of the ways that we recommend building this into the programs, and I build it in when it makes sense. It's not something we recommend for everyone. You have to do it right, and you have to do it in a way that builds on the trust that you've already gained with your customers and prospective customers.
All right. Hi, I'm Emily Ann. Most people around the agency call me EA. I will answer to that. As Director of Media and Analytics, really my core role within a content marketing agency is to take the great content that our teams have developed, work with those teams to make sure that content is primed for the media channels that we'll be pushing those out through, and then also making sure that that content gets in through the right channels to the right audience and for the right price. From a media buying perspective, I have a wealth of experience from national broadcast to online to local broadcast and print. And native advertising is a very interesting space to be in now with digital marketing, because it is, as Christine pointed out, a great way to break through a lot of the barriers that we have in online marketing with ad blockers and limited attention spans and things like that. We as marketers need to, first of all, have compelling content, but also be able to make sure that content actually gets to the right people as well. And that's really a lot of what I do.
Hi, I'm Hope Elton with Brown-Forman, and our focus is really about telling our brand stories and encouraging people to purchase and enjoy our products responsibly. And one of the ways that we found to do that is to have a full content strategy. And native advertising has helped us do that by reaching an audience outside of just our websites or just our social channels. It allows us to reach a much broader audience for people who are looking for the type of content and the type of stories that we're excited to share with them. Within the native space, if it makes sense for the site and it aligns with the brand, it can have a really powerful impact, and it really builds that emotional connection that Mark was mentioning earlier, and people really feel that about their brands, and they're very loyal to them. So when we can build that connection, it makes a really great impact.
Hi, Jeff Smith. I'm Brand Strategy Director for BuzzFeed in the Southeast region, so I work with a lot of big national brands in the region, including Brown-Forman, and we help brands create word-of-mouth marketing at scale. And how we do that, there's two sides of the business. There is the content storytelling side as well as the distribution side. So we think about all that holistically as a process and not an end product. And so we continue to work and educate brands and help them really achieve that scale with social storytelling with results behind it.
Okay. Jeff, I know you said you had a video. I didn't bring the link up because this is the wrong computer, but
Cool.
if you want to bring it up, you're more than welcome. So the first question that we have is what the heck is native advertising anyway? So if maybe,
Let me take that one.
yeah, you take that or I can.
That was the question that I actually submitted.
And I exactly that way.
I recently wrote a blog post about this as well, much to Jason's consistent nagging. But from my perspective, from a media buying perspective, native advertising is basically the digital translation of product placement. It's what could be perceived as organic content, but is actually paid for by advertisers, has a bit of a marketing message, but ultimately is of the essence of the content that you're looking at, be it BuzzFeed or Business Insider or things like that.
In a minute. Okay. Take a note. Then I guess based on that, does it work? What are your all's thoughts, feelings? I guess maybe Michael or Jeff.
I'll start.
Hope.
for us, it works. You can see with this is about eye care. It's not, something big that's out there, but it gets people reading the articles, and when you're reading the articles, you see our advertising on there. And so from our perspective, it works to get our name out there, our brand out there. People see it and recognize it, and then more importantly, it gets people thinking about their health and their health care and talking about it and talking to other people about it. So we like the actual advertising, and then of course sharing it socially and linking it and tagging it and getting other people to read it and share it and link it and all the stuff that you guys do. So we like it.
Yeah, from our perspective, BuzzFeed, it works. I still have a job, so it's working from a sort of up and down what's formerly the funnel, now the consumer journey. We've done a lot of studies up and down that journey, and seeing really large lifts, whether it's down to purchase intent all the way up to awareness and everything in between. If done, I think consistently, and that's the key too. It's just like in real life. If you're trying to change a perception or continue a conversation or change a consumer's mindset, that typically takes more than just one conversation. And so if done and done right, there's a lot underneath it done right. We've seen it to work really well for brands across the spectrum of verticals and categories.
As Brown-Forman brands, we've seen it work really well, especially within blogging space, because we have a trusted third party that the readers are looking at for new ideas and inspiration, and they share their experience with our products. It encourages them to try them or experience them in a new way, new cocktail or new tasting event or whatever.
Shell, how do agencies fit into the native advertising equation?
Really, it's dependent on the client and their needs, their program, what they want to achieve. I'm big on the goals behind any type of recommendation that we make. So the native advertising would have to fit within those goals and then deliver the results that the client's looking for.
I'll speak up to that just a little bit too. As somebody that works directly with the agencies, they're really good to work with. They understand the native content. They know the ad sizes, the ad specs that you need. They understand the content that you need. They also write the content most of the time for you, so then we're not hiring a third party outside of that. And they understand your brand a lot better than I can hire a freelancer for. Not that the freelancers aren't great and they do wonderful writing, but usually yourself or your agency is going to understand your brand a lot better. So if this is a direction to move in, consider that, because they can truly write those 600 to 800 words that are going to capture. They are going to get the best pictures. A lot of times I have to go on the internet and look for the picture, and then I have to go back 5 more times and look for the picture to get the right one. Typically, with working with an agency, they get it all right mostly the first time, just like I sometimes get it right the first time. But yeah.
And I have kind of additional feedback on that as well, that it kind of depends on the partners that you're working with. There are some partners, like our friend a couple rows over here, that that doesn't allow agency collaboration in terms of content creation. So that's something that we're continuing to work through as an agency, is how do we work with these partners when creatively we're getting pulled aside out of those conversations. We have like the upfront strategy sessions, but then our content marketers who specifically know the brand and are really deep in and very involved in that process, not able to actually write for that particular platform when we are doing on several other channels. And it's not just you guys, there's plenty of others out there too.
What are you talking about? Okay, so the big question on, I guess, a lot of people's minds right now is,
You don't want to say anything
what's the panel's opinion on how soon before the FTC really comes down on native? We just heard, Apple just released the app that does it. The guy that made the app blocker felt so bad he took it down, gave people refunds. But it's going to be, anybody have an idea of what their thoughts are on that?
I don't have an idea. I can't read their minds, but I have a paralegal background, so it's something I've thought about a lot. I think that they fired a lot of warning shots across the bow. They're getting ready to drop the hammer on people if they don't start doing it in a responsible way. Any type of advertising, generally. Tweets are just a start. I can't imagine that they're not looking at other websites or Facebook or even, publications to make sure that they're actually saying things that aren't irresponsible to consumers.
Anybody else have a? We talk about it in our office all the time, like what's gonna, we know it, we know in the ad world that we have to stay 2 steps ahead of stuff like that, and it's kind of a decision of what's gonna, okay, they're gonna shut us down, we'll just have to come up with something else, but, your time frame is, my opinion is like there's not really a guess as to when that's gonna happen.
Well, as long as you're transparent about what it is and you build on the trust that you already have, you should be pretty okay.
Yep, transparency, exactly. I mean, clickbait's clickbait no matter what it looks like, and you will get called out at some point. And so I think it's, whether it's organic looking or a banner or anything in between, so I think it's transparency. And, some content companies, including ourselves, are in a fortunate place today, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to pay attention to that every day as well.
Yep. So what elements does it take to cross the threshold to gain users' trust via native advertising?
I think more than anything, it's compelling content. If you're not getting the engagement and what you need out of and delivering to your customers what they need out of your content, then you're not doing yourself or your customers any service of giving them content that is not useful or relevant to them. So I think that's one very large piece of it, is just being very engaging and relevant to what that customer is really going through.
It's in addition to that, it's also the relevancy. So not in addition to the content, but it should be content that they would expect to find within that site that they're on. So it should kind of make sense and align with what they would already expect to find.
One good example I've seen of that lately in the past few days is Trevor Noah actually being on BuzzFeed. I keep seeing that pop up, and I'm already interested in it. It's exactly what I would expect to find on BuzzFeed. So it's the brand alignment with the publication alignment helps a lot.
Michael, how do you all at Passport measure the success of native content?
Well, we get analytics from you. We know how many people in a given month click on this, look at it. It goes out in the morning email blasts, and people get it off the website, so we can tell, although I think we're skewing the numbers right now, because we can also tell how long people are on the website reading the article, so that's all part of it. But we get monthly numbers looking at it, and then we hear from word of mouth as well. We see it gets shared on Facebook and all throughout social media to see who's reading it, who's interested in it. At the bottom, of course, there's, send us your comments. Not too many people are commenting just yet, but we're getting some, and we're hearing about it. And so, and then just because we're part of the community, we go out there and we're involved in so many different activities, sit on so many different boards, work with the mayor's office, the state, so many different advocates, hospital systems that are all over here, and we're talking, and people are reading it and noticing it. And they may just say, hey, did you see that article? Not knowing that that's the sponsored content that Passport sponsored. So we're hearing good things about it. And to go back to the last point as well, it's, with the transparency and the relevance and knowing your market, it's knowing who's reading this. And so this kind of article and these kinds of things wouldn't be going to our members, which is a different kind of audience. We know the audience of Insider Louisville, and that's why we target the specific article and post for that audience. And so it's maintaining that and staying on top of those kinds of things. So analytics, word of mouth, all the usual, and then trying to figure out what's coming next.
Anybody else?
We just, the folks that we work with have access to analytics as well. I think that's number one, first and foremost, and then just understanding from each brand agency, whoever it is you work with, like what does success look like, and that's sort of the next layer to it. Like you can see engagement, social interactions, and all of those sort of are very good and directional in the world of social. But then I think where it gets rubber meets the road is sort of that so what after that, and that's really where having a tight relationship and understanding the true business needs starts to sort of matter.
So Hope, as a brand that utilizes native content and sponsored content, what do you hope to get out of this program partnership, and have you seen any of that come to fruition yet?
So it really depends on what the objective of the campaign is, and that's something that we really think hard about. And discuss before we start a campaign, because the objective is going to determine the content and the partner that we're working with, and then our success metrics. One of the things that we hope to get out is that emotional connection that I mentioned before. Depending on the campaign, it might be, signing up for a contest. A lot of our main objective for our wine brands is driving traffic to our online store, so actual purchase or even intent to purchase comments. So it really depends on what the objective of the campaign is. So usually engagement and then purchase.
Anybody else? Emily Ann, what are some best practices that marketers or advertisers can use when they're using this kind of content?
So a lot of the things that we've already covered, make sure your content is relevant, useful. Make sure you have appropriate tracking mechanisms embedded into your content originally, so you can track those all the way through your analytics platform. And then ultimately, clearly define your success metrics up front. Continue to look into those as your campaigns are running, and make sure that you are making adjustments as you need to, shifting partners around, things like that, to make sure that you are delivering on those goals. But yeah, then ultimately determining, okay, at the end of the campaign, you did a great job, now what? Making sure that you've learned something from your first campaign and apply those learnings for future campaigns.
Also, do your research, know what you're getting into before you sign the contract. Look at previous posts, look at previous sponsored posts to see what else is getting out there. It should go without saying, but unfortunately we've seen it. People have gotten in trouble with that before, so know exactly what the website's all about that you're looking into. So.
And of course, transparency again. You don't want to get yourself in trouble.
Be creative. It's a big tool. Like with the passport pieces and some other of our agencies, our clients, they do, like Michael said, they don't necessarily report on all things healthcare related to passport and signing up and everything. They relate on other things, and those are a little bit more popular. People like the story that we just heard about, those pieces that write about the story of how the company came about or the event came about or the person behind it typically get a lot more hits, a lot more shares than something that's about I don't know. I can't even think of anything right now because it's there, and I don't want to offend anybody. But about don't make it boring. I know a lot of industries are boring, but you've got to remember that these are people that don't necessarily understand what you're talking about all the time, and they want to understand what you're talking about. So just tell your story, and that typically gets a lot more hits, I know, on our site when I'm looking at the analytics. So that's all the prepared questions that I have, which we're going along with timing really well. So I want to go ahead and open up the floor to people that have questions. I know we have one right here in front. I made him wait, so we're going to go first. I will.
So, Marketing Land recently said 80% of consumers cannot tell the difference between sponsored content and organic content. Even though it says sponsored, the sponsor's right there, 50% of people
We have that problem.
are less stupid. So, what's the middle ground? What's the shifting middle ground that you guys are going to have to move to in order to not have the FTC basically drop a hammer on your head? Because that says sponsored, but 80% of consumers can't tell the difference.
That's a relationship. That's while you build
Let me
trust.
repeat that real quick so everybody can hear it. So basically saying 80% of people cannot tell that this is a sponsored content post. Across the board, they can't tell. So what can we do so before the FTC shuts this information down, how do we let people know that it's sponsored content? What direction should we move in for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The responsibility is on both sides. So the responsibility for the person creating the content is to be transparent and to tell the story, and the publisher to note that it's sponsored content, but at some point the consumer has to be responsible for realizing that it's sponsored content.
I mean, and it's a give and take because it does say sponsored content, and so, the job is done. We don't want to have a big old banner that says this is sponsored and we paid for this, and so it's give and take there. But, like when I look on BuzzFeed, not as an advertiser, but as just someone who's reading it, I'll click on some different things and I'll read one, I'm like, oh, wait, this was sponsored by Verizon. I should have seen that. So, I mean, when we've all seen it, we've all done it. So we're part of the 80%, but we're also part of the 20%. So it's transparency and doing the stuff. that we need to. I mean, I don't know that they're going to really say, no, you have to make that bigger and increase your font size, but as long as you stay transparent and put it out there, I think that should be fine.
Yeah, before we put it, you can do it. Before we put anything up on the website, it always says sponsored. On the homepage, it's actually outlined in a different color. In the newsletter, it's a different color. It says sponsored. On the Facebook page, I always, 99% of the time, remember to write the word sponsored first and go back and fix it. Same with Twitter. And I've still gotten hate mail that says, I can't believe you tricked me into reading sponsored content. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to, us at Insider Louisville or the ad side, the news side is going to fix that any better than, I can't put it any more places except for every other word. Hi, sponsored, and then I'll get hate mail for that.
Well,
So
I think the industry needs to do a better job of explaining just the overall digital economy, that content is not free, and
It's usually
that, in order, because they have ad blockers and all these other things, we as advertisers need to find other ways to get to them, or else their content will no longer be free.
Jeff, did you have something?
No, I mean, that goes back to, I mean, it's just be real. There's some shitty experiences out there, and I think it is on us though. I mean, I'm certainly, even I work for BuzzFeed, and I'm probably one of the 80% of that staff. I have a better study that only says like 60% should be using that. So no, but I think it comes down to it's transparency and being real, and just paying attention. I mean, it's simple. They're always going to be looking at something, and so I think it's just on both sides though.
You have a question?
Yeah. Before you decide to maybe go down the route of native advertising as a publisher, what's more important in determining your sponsor? That your editorial views match your sponsor's views, or that your editorial views match your sponsor's views, or that your sponsor's views match your views?
So the question is, how do you determine which path to go down, whether your editorial matches your sponsor's views or your sponsor's views matches your editorial? Or you can also add in that, do you even think about those things?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think more, we're agency,
We don't have very many on the publisher side, but I would say, I went to journalism school, so. But, from that front, I think, it is really incumbent on the publishers to really determine, to set some ground rules on who they're willing to participate with and who they're not. I think more than anything, their consumer brand experience should be the utmost importance. I think Facebook has done a great job of that, of making sure user experience trumps everything else. So making sure that when you do have sponsored content coming through on your site, that it is going to be something relevant for your readers, because if they find that their experience on your site is poor, they're not coming back.
Yeah, we basically, our sales team is the one that goes out and sells for us, and they try really to match up clients that are obviously going to be matched up with our readership and what they want to do. We have onboarding phone calls. If I see something come across, especially from a freelancer, an agency or something, and I don't think it's going to fit, I typically try and get them on a different angle as to what they're going to write it for. Everything is read and approved before it ever gets published on our site on the sponsor content side of stuff, as well as the reporting. I just don't have anything to do with editorial. But we make sure that we try to make sure that doesn't happen. I can't 100% guarantee, but it is something that's conscious of our sales team when they go out and are pitching these ideas, that it is going to line up. Because it's their ads that run as well, so we want to make sure that they line up with our beliefs and what goes on. And we're a pretty open publication, so it's pretty wide range of what is acceptable. When I worked at Cafe Press, it was the same thing. We kind of filtered all that stuff out, but again, a wide range of what's offensive and what's not, and there's always a fine line. So you kind of just have to take each advertiser as they come and kind of evaluate.
I would say that some of it comes down to brand alignment, and that goes for both sides. For instance, I don't think T-Mobile, as ballsy as they are, would ever sponsor content on Business Insider. It's just not their thing. We would probably have a heart attack on our hands if we suggested it. So, and then additionally, I would say reading what other writers have written on that site is highly important for the brand, because brands have a responsibility to publish the content that's, valuable but also trustworthy. And if they're not doing that, and that's going to mess up your brand ultimately down the road.
We have a few more questions. Time for a few more questions. Anybody? Wow, I guess we did such a good job already asking questions.
If I could, I was just going to add something to that. For us, I mean, we're a statewide plan. We know there's Republicans and Democrats all over the place. People have a lot of things, a lot of issues. We don't want to alienate anybody. And so when we look at whether it's inside of Louisville or different advertising ideas, different avenues, we try to, be as vanilla as possible. I mean, we did have a political post recently, but it was just make sure you're registered to vote, because healthcare is a very important issue. Politicians are making decisions. We're not coming out and telling you what the Democrats think, what the Republicans think, except to say, look at what the Democrats think and what the Republicans think, and educate yourselves and vote. So for us, trying to stay as inclusive as possible. Now, there are different companies, different brands that want to target different things. So that goes back to research. Know what the website is you're looking at. If there's one that's more liberal, one that's more conservative, target your message appropriately. So, yeah.
Any other questions that we might have? Okay. Well, thank you, panelists. I really appreciate you guys signing up and doing this and participating. So I think it's all helpful knowledge. Thank you.